Hello everybody, Mrs. Rickenbach back with another book for you today. We're going to be reading a book by the same author that we heard from yesterday, Daniel Pinkwater. This guy is pretty silly. He likes to write lots of fiction stories that are definitely fantasy fiction, as you'll tell from this book and the illustrations. This book is called The Tooth-Gnasher Superflash. And as you can see, it was read on Reading Rainbow a long time ago. Some of you I know have been watching Reading Rainbow during this time. If you haven't seen it before, I definitely recommend dialing it up. So the thing I want you to be thinking about reading this book is about compound words. If you remember, compound words are two words put together to make one word, like cupcake or bathtub. In this case, Superflash is a compound word, and even the author's last name is a compound word, Pinkwater. And I do have a challenge at the end of this book for you to try if you would like. Again, it's optional, of course, but be listening and again, be thinking of compound words. So here we go. Tooth-Gnasher Superflash by Daniel Pinkwater. Mr. Popsnorkel decided it was time to buy a new car. His old car, a green Thunderclap 8, was just about worn out. So, Mr. Popsnorkel and Mrs. Popsnorkel and the 5 little Popsnorkels all got into the worn-out green Thunderclap 8 and went looking for a nice new car. They drove down to the highway where all the car dealers were and looked at all the signs and shiny new cars in the windows. "Look!" shouted the 5 little Popsnorkels. "The Tooth-Gnasher Superflash! That's a great car!" "It is a pretty color," said Mrs. Popsnorkel. It was light blue. Mr. Popsnorkel turned into the parking lot of the Tooth-Gnasher car dealer. A salesman came out. "I am Mr. Sandy," said the car salesman. "May I show you the new Tooth-Gnasher Superflash? We only have one left." "Is it the light blue one?" Mrs. Popsnorkel asked. Mr. Popsnorkel and Mrs. Popsnorkel and the 5 little Popsnorkels and Mr. Sandy, the car salesman, all got into the Tooth-Gnasher Superflash. Mr. Sandy drove, and Mr. Popsnorkel sat next to him. Mrs. Popsnorkel and the 5 little Popsnorkels all sat in the back seat. "See how smooth it rides?" Mr. Sandy asked. "We love this car!" shouted the 5 little Popsnorkels. "Buy it, Daddy!" "It is a beautiful light blue," Mrs. Popsnorkel said. "Would it be all right if I drove the car for a while?" Mr. Popsnorkel asked Mr. Sandy, the car salesman. Mr. Sandy pulled over to the side of the road and got out and opened the door for Mrs. Popsnorkel, who got in the front seat with Mr. Popsnorkel, who had moved over behind the steering wheel. Mr. Sandy, the car salesman, got in the back seat with the 5 little Popsnorkels. "Yay!" shouted the 5 little Popsnorkels. "Daddy is going to drive the Tooth-Gnasher Superflash!" Mr. Popsnorkel started the Tooth-Gnasher Superflash. It roared out onto the highway. The tires squealed. Other drivers honked their horns. "Yay!" the 5 little Popsnorkels shouted. "Perhaps you shouldn't drive quite so fast until you are used to the car," Mr. Sandy, the car salesman, said. "What does this button do?" Mr. Popsnorkel asked as he pushed the button on the dashboard. The Tooth-Gnasher Superflash rose up on its rear wheels and zoomed along the highway with its nose high in the air. "This is very nice," Mr. Popsnorkel said. "And what does this button do?" He pushed another button, and the car began to rock from side to side on its rear wheels. Then the rear wheels turned into little legs, and the car turned into a dinosaur riding on its hind legs.
fine," said Mr. Popsnorkel. "I like a car that turns into a dinosaur. And what does this button do?" He pushed another button. The dinosaur put his nose down near the road and began to run on all fours. Then the Tooth-Gnasher Superflash turned into a galloping elephant. "Yay!" the five little Popsnorkels shouted. "It turns into an elephant too, dear," Mr. Popsnorkel said to Mrs. Popsnorkel. "That's very nice, dear," said Mrs. Popsnorkel, "and such a lovely color. But do you have to go so fast?" "Of course not," Mr. Popsnorkel said. "Now let's see what this button does." He pushed another button, and the Tooth-Gnasher Superflash changed from a galloping elephant to a gigantic turtle. "My goodness, this is really a good car," Mr. Popsnorkel said. "It turns into a dinosaur and an elephant and a turtle. Can it do anything else?" "I really don't know," said Mr. Sandy, the car salesman. "I've never had a car turn into a dinosaur or an elephant or a turtle before. This is not the way the Tooth-Gnasher Superflash is supposed to behave." "Well, it's just the way I think a car should behave," said Mr. Popsnorkel. "The only thing I'd like this car to do besides turning into a dinosaur and an elephant and a gigantic turtle would be to turn into a huge chicken and fly. Now let's see if there's a button that will do that." Mr. Popsnorkel found another button on the dashboard and pushed it. The Tooth-Gnasher Superflash turned into a huge chicken and flew all the way back to the car dealers. "This is a first-class car," Mr. Popsnorkel said. "We'll take it." "Yay!" shouted the five little Popsnorkels. "It certainly is a lovely color," said Mrs. Popsnorkel. "I never saw a car do any of those things," said Mr. Sandy, the car salesman. Mr. Popsnorkel and Mrs. Popsnorkel and the five little Popsnorkels traded in their worn-out green Thunderclap 8 and gave Mr. Sandy lots of money. They drove away in their new light blue Tooth-Gnasher Superflash. "Yay! We love our new car!" the five little Popsnorkels shouted. "It really is a lovely color," said Mrs. Popsnorkel. She's very concerned about the color of the car. "It's a nice car, all right," said Mr. Popsnorkel, "but it can't do half the things our good old Thunderclap 8 could do." I wonder what on earth the Thunderclap 8 did that this car cannot do. All right, so here's the challenge. Remember, you are supposed to be thinking about compound words. If you need to pause the video, go back, pause, look at the pages with the words to write down any compound words you can find. Go right ahead and do that. But your challenge is to take at least 3, maybe 4 or 5 of the compound words that you found in here and to write your own either story, a poem, even just a paragraph using some of the compound words that you found in this book. Okay, you could email it to me, you could take a picture and send it. I'd love to see what you come up with. And also, if you are still working on houses from the Big Orange Spot yesterday, definitely send those along. I'd love to see some. I got a couple, but I don't want to post a blooms post until I get a few more. So postcards will be coming soon. I dropped those in the mail today, so you should expect those either tomorrow or Saturday. And also, starting next week, we are going to be doing some class meetings on the computer. I will send more information to your families about that. I don't have the details yet, but that will be happening next week. It will be such a nice way to be able to see our faces and talk together and just kind of connect a little bit, which will be really helpful for everybody. So I think that is it for now. Please email me anytime, write me a letter anytime. But I hope you're enjoying yourselves. I miss you very much, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.